Thank you, panel. My name is Robert Dempsey. I am the interim CEO of Ashvattha. At Ashvattha, we are a clinical stage company developing a nanomedicine therapeutic for retinal vascular diseases with unprecedented precision and a focus on diabetic eye disease. So we are reinventing potentially how patients are administered retinal treatments. MGB, or migaladendronim, is a novel first-in-class hydroxyl dendrimer, which normalizes VEGF expression of activated retinal cells at the root cause of fluid for patients who have posterior segment diseases. It is retained in cells for up to 30 days, renally cleared in 2 days. From a standpoint of safety, MGB is clearly well tolerated and safe in our clinical studies up to 40 weeks. From an administration perspective, something that clearly differentiates MGB is the fact it can be delivered at home monthly via sub-Q administration for bilateral treatment of posterior segment disease, ultimately substantially reducing the treatment burden that patients, payers, and providers experience. Recently, we had an FDA engagement, and this was a very important moment for the company, and we have agreed upon a phase 2b/3 protocol under the same protocol which will allow us to rapidly enroll patients and get to a pivotal endpoint with this guidance. From a standpoint of focus, we'll be focused on diabetic eye disease, both DME and then eventually diabetic retinopathy. From a standpoint of market research, we've done extensive research in payers, providers, in patients. And as you can imagine, a sub-Q administration at home really resonates with all three of these very important parties. From a standpoint of IP, we have composition of matter through 2040, and we have a proven team of ophthalmology, retina, and transaction expertise, and are currently working with a wonderful group of key opinion leaders, both in the US as well as globally. So let's take a look at where our focus is. Obviously, diabetic macular edema, diabetic retinopathy are large markets, but I want to call your attention to the fact the majority of DME patients have progressive bilateral disease. These patients are requiring numerous injections in both eyes. What does this lead to? A significant amount of dropout of patients that have diabetic eye disease, in which in DME, based on our research, approximately 50% of patients drop out of treatment after 2 years of therapy. So what is our solution? Our solution is a novel targeted nanomedicine for the bilateral treatment of retinal diseases. MGB is a new class of nanomedicine in hydroxyl dendrimer that is covalently linked to a VEGF receptor, TKI, which shuts down VEGF expression at the source and restores normal VEGF signaling by targeting activated macrophages, microglia, and hypoxic RPE. From a standpoint, again, it treats both eyes with a single monthly sub-Q administration and potentially can be used at home, and eventually we'll be talking about in a few moments with an auto-injector. From a standpoint of safety, we'll talk about that in more detail. It's cleared by the kidney, not metabolized, and no liver exposure. So now let's transition to our phase 2 MGB top-line results. This was presented at EU Retina by Dr. Ashai Kahani, and be presented later on by Dr. Michael Singer. This was a clinical study in previously treated DME as well as neovascular AMD patients, in which MGB provides bilateral therapeutic benefits while reducing the need for IVT treatment burden. From a standpoint of improvement in retinal function and structure after 40 weeks of treatment. From a DME perspective, we saw 6.1 letters gained, as well as reduction in fluid of 23 microns. From a neovascular AMD perspective, we saw improvement of almost 1 line of vision, as well as a 63 drop in microns of fluid. Now let's talk about the reduction in the need for IVT anti-VEGF therapy in both eyes. From a DME perspective, we saw close to an 80% reduction versus pre-study intravitreal treatment. From a standpoint of neovascular AMD, 83% reduction versus pre-study IVT, And the good news also followed through in the fellow eyes, in which we saw a close to a 90% reduction in pre-study IVT. So what does this conclude? Strongly supports further clinical development of MGB. From a standpoint of safety, our Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Schneider, is always saying safety, safety, safety. And we feel that MGB is very safe and well tolerated out to 40 weeks, in which we didn't see any clinically significant change from baseline in renal, hepatic, or cardiac values. In addition, no ocular or systemic serious adverse events deemed MGB treatment related. Okay, so where are we from a standpoint of positioning this program for rapid advancement? From a clinical efficacy perspective, 55 participants have been studied to date across 3 clinical trials. It was proven to be safe and well tolerated, with definitely potential for positive trends from an efficacy perspective. From a standpoint of regulatory process, coming off the heels of our FDA engagement, in which we have now alignment for a phase 2b/3 trial design under the same protocol. In addition, we have initiated a global outreach to regulatory agencies in various territories across the world. From a standpoint of near-term milestones, we want to kick off a healthy volunteer study in the first quarter of next year. This will allow us to have a loading dose as well as push the dose. In addition, we have an auto-injector in development. We all know the success of the GLP-1s. Can you imagine us with an MGP with an auto-injector? We think that's going to be a game changer. In addition, we do want to activate our phase 2b program in the back half of next year. In conclusion, MGB has potential to be a safe at-home administration, exhibiting a bilateral treatment effect with a single monthly sub-Q administration that may be an alternative for the frequent in-office intravitreal injections patients and providers are dealing with today. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bob. You can join us up here.